Tier list. Let's go. Starting off with the Sheridan. Sheridan, the light tanks have a different group of the rest of the tanks, I feel, and the Sheridan is one of the better light tanks due to its alpha, but its penetration and its accuracy are both pretty bad. Plus, its mobility is um, one of the lower end of the light tanks. As well, its spotting range is really good. So it's a great performer, I'd say. Sheridan, great performer, works well, um, does its job well. M48 Patton. Now, I never played this tank, but when I've come against it, I think it is alright in situational. Um, it's got good turret armor, but it has weak cheeks, and its whole armor is pretty poor, as well as it can get overmatched. It's like the E5, but worse. M60, same thing. Same thing as the M48 Patton, so uh, they're both in the same ballpark as alright situational. On to the E5. Now, I'm going to say E5 is super competitive. After the Type 71 nerfs and the Kranvagn nerfs, I don't think the Kranvagn got nerfed, but due to the Kranvagn being super slow for a heavy tank, meant to be um, like a super quick heavy tank, although I'm not saying that the Kranvagn is imbalanced, like it's perfectly fine where it is. I think it needs a little bit of a buff, um, but other than that, it's perfectly fine. The E5 on its own is really good. It has a really strong turret, really good gun, um, really good hull armor. Its upper plate is really strong, and its tracks are, the weak point is the tracks, as with any American tank. Um, but you can get some really odd ricochets on the side of the E5 if you angle it properly. Now, 57 heavy. I hate this tank. I feel like it's way too slow. It has 35 kilometers per hour top speed. I think it's maybe even less. And it has 12 kilometers per hour reverse speed. And its armor sucks. They rebalance the armor so that the hull is now like it can get penned, and the turret was awful, but you could I like 57 heavy before the nerf. Um, well, nerf or buff depending on what you say. I say it was a nerf because it just rebalanced the turret and the hull is now awful, and the turret is the same as it was before. And I mean, the only redeeming factor is the gun. And even then, I mean, the gun it's pretty good, but its mobility lets it down. Um, M6Yo. Now, I've never played this tank. Well, yes, I have, and honestly, it was pretty good for me. I feel, but this was a while ago, and I've only played like 4 or 5 games in it. I'd say it's a decent choice. Uh, Due to the increased penetration of most tanks, mainly heavy tanks that it comes across, the upper turret can get penned, and as well as the sides here, and on the other side. Plus the cupolas, if you have a really accurate gun, like on a 5A or an E5, um, and they aim, they can hit your cupolas pretty easily. Um, Onto the E6, TNT5 E6, I'd say it's a decent choice. I made the stupid decision of spending 20,000 gold on this tank just for the 25 times XP boosters. And I sold it after I got all the, no, I don't know what I got it for, but it was some kind of thing with the bundle that came with it. I played like 120 games in it, did average like 2.8k. But honestly, the one thing that I have to say about the E6 is that its modules get damaged so easily and so repetitively. It was a pain to play in this tank because every other game my ammunition rack was damaged or my driver was dead, and it just it has the gun, it can deal the damage, but it's just a piss poor tank to play because of its module and its crew getting damaged so often. Onto the first overpowered tank, the Concept 1B. It's just too good. It's just too good. The turret's impenetrable, the upper plates are auto ricochet, and the lower plate, if you can hide it, no one's penning you. Um, the cupola is really, really small as well. It has like 2.8k DPM with that turret and that hull armor. It's just too good. And the mobility. The mobility is like 35 kilometers per hour. It's like an E5 with better turret armor and better frontal hull armor and a better gun. It's just a better E5. And the E5 is already super competitive, so the Concept 1B is going to be even better. On to the E4. I'm going to say the E4 is a great performer. It's the American tank destroyer with the turret, and it is weak. The turret is weak. It's not like an E3, which I'll get to. Um, the turret is weak on the E3, but it has the same. The turret is weak on the E4, sorry, but it has pretty much the same exact gun. Um, the Cupola as well was pretty weak, but it does have that turret, which really helps compared to the E3. It also, I think, has a little bit better mobility. Out of the E3, I'm going to say the E3 is super competitive. Um, really strong tank. You can't go wrong with an E3. It's a really boring tank, though. It does get really boring doing 3k damage every game and just, it's the same thing over and over again. Just go to a spot where you can go hold down. Sorry, and you can just go hold down. It's not that difficult to do. Um, Cupola is very strong. The gun is very good, and the track wheels are very troll. Onto the T100 LT. I'm going to say the T100 LT is a great performer. Maybe a little bit into the decent choices section, um, but honestly a great performer. I don't really like the T100 LT. I find the lack of gun depression to be one of its main downsides. But going against it, it seems very overpowered. Um, its upper plate is too good, just like on the Object 84. Um, although its gun has been nerfed, as well as its view range. So T100 LT, it's a great performer. On to the 62A. 62A is super competitive. It just has everything going for it. It has great mobility, great traverse, great turret armor, great accuracy, a great gun. Um, the only thing that lets it down is the hull armor. Um, and maybe the top end speed if you're going up against a Leo or a 140 and they get to the position quicker. As well as the 70. Well, this isn't a weakness, but the 7 degrees of gun depression on the 62A is really really good, and I really like that, and I get it to work very well. Onto the 140, I'm going to put the 140 one lower than the 62A. I think the 62A is better than the 140. Um, the 140, it just has no turret armor. Like it can get penned by standard rounds on most heavy tanks now, and it's just, you know, if you're on a map, if you're on like a medium tank map like Port Bay, and you're in an Object 140, you're gonna get penned by in the turret, even if you're using your 10, even if you're using your 6 degrees of gun depression, which is one less than the 62A. Um, and even with the tank, it has the same DPM relatively, but it has worse accuracy and a worse aim time. It's just all around a worse tank than the 62A. Um, it does have a better upper plate though, I will say, because it's more angles, so you can get more ricochets. It's just, you know, play the 62A over the 140. Onto the 907. Now, I've never played the 907, but from what I've seen, it's a great performer. It kind of plays like the 140, just with a better turret and more troll. It has like the turret of the 62A with the hull armor roughly of the T22, um, which may make it seem like it's incredible, but it only has like 5 or 6 degrees of gun depression, which really holds it back. So, 907, I've never played it, but it seems pretty solid. Onto the T22, I'm going to say the T22 in its current state is super competitive. Um, can't really go wrong with the T22. Um, it has the turret armor that's impenetrable. It has the gun, um, and even though like you can make a 907 work, but even though with the gun and the lack of gun depression, I think it only has like 6 degrees. Um, I've I love the T22, um, and I just think it performs better than both the 140 and the 907 when going against it. So or when playing it, you can easily play a T22 medium without any effort. Out of the IS-4, I believe this is. I'm going to say it's super competitive. Um, the upper hull is really good. The turret is really good. The gun is really good. Everything about this is really good. Except for maybe the lower plate if you have a high pen gun aiming at you. The upper plate as well. I know I mentioned it's really good against standard rounds, but against most premium rounds from tier 10 heavy tanks, it's going to go through unless you're really lucky. As well as the space next to the gun mantlet is pennable, although it doesn't seem to happen too often unless you're facing a really accurate gun and you just sit there for long enough for them to aim. On the IS-7, I'm going to say the IS-7 is better than the IS-4. Um, I was considering putting it into overpowered, the IS-7, because it is really good and the gun is really good. It's 460 alpha compared to the IS-4's 420 alpha. The only thing that holds back the IS-7 is the penetration, although you can get around that with its mobility, as well as its armor profile. Um, the pike nose, it's an issue, but the turret is basically impenetrable. So you're never getting through the IS-7's turret unless you're behind it, or to the side. Object 260, avoid it. It's bad. It's like an IS-7 but worse. So everyone knows the armor profile on the 260, and everyone knows that the lower plate is huge, the turret is weak, the gun is pretty mediocre, and the pike nose is actually worse than the IS-7 because it's less angled. 268. It's super competitive. Really good gun, really good mobility, pretty troll armor, you gotta say. Like the 268 has really good armor. Um, you just can't go wrong. And it has really good penetration as well. I mean, its standard rounds are really good. Its premium rounds are even better. I think it's 395 heat rounds with calibrated, so that's going through everything. Um, Object 263. It's alright situational. I remember the hype around this tank once it got buffed, and that has died off pretty steeply. Uh, it, you know, there will be a recurring theme in this video of just gun depression holding tanks back. And the 263 is the same thing. I mean, it has pretty good armor and it has pretty good mobility, but its gun depression is only 4 degrees. And its gun is pretty inaccurate for a Russian tank destroyer. Compared to the 268 with its 640 alpha and 0.27 dispersion at max, you're running reticle and everything. Um, I don't even know um, the dispersion on the 263, but I know that it's worse than the 268. So, the 263 has just been held back by its lack of gun depression and lack of alpha damage. The version 4, I'd say the decent choice. Um, every once this tank was introduced, it was like a worrisome thing because on PC it's like overpowered as hell. But honestly, it hasn't made that much of a dent in the game. Um, if you angle it even slightly, the side of next to the gun is penetrable. So, and the lower plate, if you have a high enough penetration round, is you can go through it. As well as it's very slow in the traverse, so any medium tank will get around it, and even the quicker heavy tanks will get around it. E50M, I think it's OP. I think it's overpowered, to be honest. It just has everything going for it. It has good mobility, it has great armor. I mean, incredible side armor. It has an incredible turret, a very troll turret. Its lower plate is huge, but if you wiggle enough with its great traverse, it's gonna hit your tracks, and you're not gonna get penned because the tracks are impenetrable at like a frontally angled. So it's just like a mouse. But the mouse has a really small lower plate, but the E50M has a really big lower plate, but the tracks work the same. If you shoot into the tracks of a mouse, you're not going to pen it. Same thing with the E50M. If you shoot frontally into the tracks of an E50M, you're not going to pen it. It's just going to get absorbed. So, and its gun is incredible. It has like 3.2k DPM, really good heat rounds. It basically plays like a Russian med. It actually has more alpha damage than the Russian medium. So honestly, grind up the E50M line. It's really, really good. The Leopard, avoid it. It has no armor. It has it has an okay gun, but it has bad mobility, no armor. Well, it has good mobility. Sorry. I didn't mean to say bad mobility. It has good mobility, but it has no armor, and that really holds it back because, especially with, I mean, the only piece of armor on the tank is the gun mantlet. And even though it is huge, the sides are padded with HE by almost every single tier 10 tank that just loads it and shoots it in the side. So honestly, not a very good tank. I never enjoyed it. Um, Compound's a 50 ton. I'd say it's a decent choice from what I've seen going against it. I think it has good turret armor. It has pretty good hull armor. Um, its gun is okay. There's not much to comment on that tank that I've never played before. So, the mouse, I'd say it's alright situational or decent choices. I'm gonna say alright situational because it's just gotten power crept. The armor can get penned by anything, especially the tier 10 heavy tanks that it's going up against. I mean, the cheeks are weak. Even if you angle, it can still be penned by some, like a Kron with 374 heat pen. And the tank destroyers nowadays, I mean, you can go through the upper plate of a mouse with heat rounds from a 268, like just frontally. So, and the lower plate is, it's small, and if you wiggle the tank, they won't pen you. Um, as well as the sides, it's very slow, obviously, as it's the heaviest tank in the game. But it's just the turret that holds it back. I mean, even if you angle the cheeks are very poor. E100, I'm gonna say, all right. Now, I put this in overpowered earlier, but I'm gonna say it's a super competitive tank. But it's right up on the list. Like I love the E100. I just feel like the gun, when it works, which it usually does, it works well. You can easily do 3k damage if you know how to angle the E100 in the turret. Um, the lower plate as well, it's pretty strong. The upper plate is impenetrable, as well as the side skirts are along the tracks, which prevent you from getting HE and heat round into your hull. Um, Now, with the box shape on the E100, you can't angle to multiple tanks, but you can angle to one tank and one enemy, and if that works for you, then you're gonna win that engagement. Um, so yeah, I mean, and the gun as well. 640 Alpha is incredible for a heavy tank. Like it just works. Like you can deal a lot of damage in a little amount of time, and the reload it doesn't seem to be that long. Like I think it's 15.6 seconds, which you can avoid the battle for 15.6 seconds, and then go right back out and shoot again, which is very good. VK, I'm gonna say it's a decent choice from what I've played, which is only like 3 games. Um, the lower plate is good. It's strong. It's not like I thought it was. But going against it, the side of the gun is the side of the hole in the turret where the turret and hole meet is still very weak. Um, if you angle it, it's gonna go swimmingly, because they probably won't be able to pen you. But the gun is very irreliable or unreliable, and it's very slow, and it's not a very good tank. VK90 is overpowered from what I've played in it, and from what I have gone against it. Um, the lower plate is extremely good. It plays just like an E50M with the traverse on the hull. If you traverse the hull like wiggle, you're not gonna pet it. It's just gonna get absorbed by the tracks. Um, and its traverse is pretty good, so you're not gonna get COD'd. So, and the turret is incredible. Like the cheeks are very small compared to the mouse. Like the cheeks on the VK is are very small, and the gun is incredible. It has like 460 or 490 alpha. Um, really good turret and really good tank overall. The Yag, I'm gonna say it's alright situational. Um, the Yag, it plays like an E100 with just without the ability to angle the turret or the turret part of the mainframe. Uh, so it has one of the bigger guns in the game, but it's just slow, and you can't really angle it. And once you over angle it a little bit, it gets penned in the side, and the lower plate is really big, and it's just a nightmare to play. Gorilla, alright, situational. I don't like the Gorilla. I'm not gonna lie. I think the the stigma of it being the most accurate tank in the game is BS. Uh, I honestly I don't like the tank. I've missed so many fully aimed shots, and no wonder they added reticle calibration to it. They shouldn't even need to add reticle calibration to it. If it's the most accurate tank in the game, why did they add reticle calibration to it? Like why? that just proves that it's not the most accurate tank in the game. So yeah, Gorilla runs Spall because everyone shoots HE at you, um, and it's just very weak. So it can work in some situations, but overall it's very poor. Vickers is very competitive as a light tank. I think it is one of the better light tanks, and it just works. I mean, it has 10 degrees of gun depression, pretty good turret armor, pretty good DPM, and pretty good spotting range. So that's about all you need in a tank. 422, I think it's a great performer after the turret buff that it got. I think that the upper hole is still pretty troll, and the lower plate is still very small. So the hull is very good. Um, same as the American tanks. The track wheel is very weak, and the hash works to a T. If you can get it to work, uh, it works very well. So 4202 is a great performer. 215B, get rid of it. If you have it, get rid of it. It's a piss poor tank, and its hull is nowhere. Its turret is pannable by high-end premium rounds, and it's slow as knobs, and it's honestly just an appalling tank to play. Um, 4005 is the same, is in the same boat. Everyone thought that the 4-shell auto reloader or auto loader would make it better, and it really didn't. Honestly, the 3-shell is better. Um, it's just big. that's that's all I gotta say. It's just big and no armor, and it doesn't work in many situations. And it's just a very bad tank. It has a pretty inaccurate gun. The Badger I'm gonna say is super competitive. From what I've gone against it, the lower plate seems to have gotten weaker, or maybe that's just power creep. But I feel like the lower plate can get penned by most things with premium. And at tier 10, you're gonna be spamming premium almost all the time against heavily armored tanks. Um, as well as it's pretty slow. Um, and the sides are pretty weak. So I'm bashing on this, but actually, you know what? I'm gonna put it down to decent choices or great performance. Sorry, because it works sometimes, but it has major downsides like the lower plate. And I mean, the gun's pretty good. The gun is one of the redeeming factors, as well as the main body armor, not including the lower plate. Um, so yeah, I think it's a great performer. Um, and it can get COD'd easily because the traverse is not very good. STB, I don't like the STB, but I'm still gonna say it's a great performer. Mainly because why I don't like the STB, I actually don't know. Because I never really got it to work when I had it, and then I sold it because it was like one of these tanks where I was playing it and playing it and playing it, and I just couldn't get it to work, so I sold it, and I never touched it again. Um, I mean, it seems good on paper, but for me, the turret armor just didn't work out. Um, Going against it, it seems the turret armor works out, but when you're playing it, it doesn't seem to work out. So I don't know if I'm playing it wrong. I've improved as a player since the last time I had it, like 6 or 7 months ago. So I'm gonna have to revisit the STB once I buy it back and see how it goes. Type. It's in between great performers and super competitive. I'm gonna say it's still super competitive. Even with its nerfs, I think it still works. Well, definitely not in meta anymore, but it definitely still works. Um, Worse than the IS-4, worse than the IS-7, worse than the E3 or the E5, sorry, and worse than the E100 in my opinion. Um, but also better than some other tanks on there like the Yo and the the Mouse and the VK um, and the E6. So I think the type, it has a very small lower plate and it has very troll side armor. So I think it still works and it's still a very good tank, but it's definitely very boring to play, and I don't really play it in public matches anymore. The Hurry is overpowered. It still is. It always has been. Ever since its release, like 2 years ago, it's always been overpowered. It just, you can't touch a good tank, and it's, you know, even though it's in this overpowered state, no one plays it because the line is pretty poor. Like the tier 8's not that good, and the tier 9 is a struggle. And so people don't really like to play the hurry, or people not that they don't like to play the hurry, but they don't play the hurry because they don't want to grind up the line. Like I didn't want to grind up the line because I knew that the tanks would be awful. Um, but yeah, I mean the hurry going against it has a great gun, it has great mobility, and it just has great armor. The only weak point is the lower plate and the turret cheeks, and even then they'll have to be. Well, the lower plate can be penned with standard, but it's very small and very troll. Um, and the turret cheeks have to be penned with premium, as well as you can't get COD'd by many medium tanks because your traverse is just that good, and your gun is just incredible. I mean, it has the best pen in the game for AP rounds, and as well as your premium rounds have better pen, or I think it's worse pen and more damage uh than your standard rounds. But the penetration drop off is like 5 millimeters, which is incredible because you're doing more damage with very little pen drop off, and so it's just an all around incredible tank, and I cannot wait to play it once I get enough credits. I think this is a Chinese light tank. From playing the line, it seems like it's alright situational. I mean, the tier 8 and the tier 9 were dog shit. Um, I did not like the tier 8. Although then again, it has the worst traverse in the entire line, at like 56 degrees per second, maybe even less, like 52. And the rest of the tanks in the line have like 65 and over. So it's, I mean, the tier 8 was a nightmare to play. Um, the tier 9, it works. It had the DPM. It just didn't really have the armor, and I'm hoping that the tier 10 does have the armor, but it seems like it's alright situational, and it doesn't. I mean, I'm glad that Wargaming balanced out that overpowered spotting mechanic that the Chinese light tanks have, with them being such awful tanks. Um, so thank you Wargaming for that. That's the 5A. It's super competitive. It's really good. Um, I've played like 200 games in it just to grind credits, and it's worked for me. So I really recommend you get the 5A. It works wonders, and its gun is really good. The penetration is lacking. It's like an IS4. It's like an IS7 penetration with heat rounds, which is pretty poor because heat rounds can't go through space armor. So yeah, you have poor pen, but if you face hug in a 5A and you just get your gun up and they can't hit your cupolas, you're gonna win that engagement every single time. 1-1. I think it's a great performer. Um, Going up the line, I didn't really uh hate it that much. Like I was averaging about 2,000 damage in every single tank that I was playing. Um, Maybe like 500 each up every time you go off a tier. But the 1-1 I've played, like I think I played a single game on it on another count, and I did like 400 damage because I got completely screwed over by the team. Um, so yeah, I'll have to get that one more of a go. But from what I've seen, it's a great performer. 1-1B, I'm gonna say it's a decent choice. It's a little bit worse than the 1-1. Um, I'd say I think it has 7 degrees of gun suppression, but its whole armor is pretty poor. And its gun is lacking in DPM compared to the 1-1. So I don't think it has. I think it's a little bit worse than the 1-1. But the 1-1B is still a good choice. It's a decent choice, as the tier says. The 113, I think it's a really good tank, and I think it's overpowered at this stage. Um, Now going when I was grinding up the line and I was like researching the tank and I was looking at videos on how to play it, they all said that the traverse in both the hull and the turret is really poor. But honestly, you don't feel it because you're facing heavy tanks, and its mobility is really good for its armor. Its lower plate is really big and it's really poor. But if you can hide that, you're not gonna get penned. And its gun is really good. It has like 3.4k DPM or something, and it has really good pen, and it's just a great tank. Honestly, I highly recommend you get the 113. A really boring tank, however, I find, so I don't play it as often as I probably should. Um, but yeah, the 113 is still a great tank. The 113 GFT, I think it's alright situational. Um, the line was pretty poor. I didn't really like the tier 9. And the tier 8 was pretty okay. Um, but yeah, I don't know if the tier 10. I've never played it, but it seems like every single time I see someone else play it, which is a rarity, considering this is one of the least played tier 10 tank destroyers, it doesn't seem to do very well. So yeah, it from what I've seen, it's all right. The bat chat, I think it's still super competitive. If you can make a bat chat where you can pretty much like, make any tank work, um, the Batchat is one of the better 210 light tanks, in my opinion. It just has, that auto loader with 900, I think it's 930 alpha or 930 clip potential in 4.6 seconds, I think. Yeah, 4.6 seconds. That's really good for a light tank. And then you can zoom off and hide. So, the Batchat was introduced a long time ago, and it's gotten buffed slowly to its shell reload, as well as to its armor. It's got Spall now, so, they've just been buffing it slightly and slightly and slightly as Wargaming, and it's just turned into this really good competitive tank that you can really make work. 30B, avoid it. It's not a very good tank. I've never played it, but from what I've gone against it, it plays like the old 4202 without the turret armor, um, and no hull armor. So I think it is a pretty poor tank. Um, and yeah, the front of the turret is full gun mantlet, which is impenetrable, so it's fine, I guess, if you're hull down, but you have that garbage can, quoted garbage can on top of the tank as the cupola, so it just gets penned by anything, and it's huge. 50B, I'm gonna say it's a great performer. People don't like this tank, and I don't really get why. I never really wanted to grind up the line because the 5120 is awful, but the 50B is really, really good, I feel. Um, the hull armor is incredible, in the front at least. The side, if you over angle a little bit, you can get HE'd by anything. Um, it's just very small, but it can still be hit. I've done over 1,000 damage in multiple tanks to a 50B in the side, and it's just really easy farming if you hit the side of a 50B, load HE, and hit it in the hull. The turret's pretty good. It can be troll, and the gun is really good as well. Um, I think it's 1600 in 9 seconds, which is really good. And is it? Yeah, I think it is. And the mobility is incredible. Um, its camo is pretty poor because it's so big, but if you haven't grinded up the 50B line, I recommend you do it. And it's also has 10 degrees of gun depression, which makes the turret even stronger. Uh, AMX M454. I'm gonna say it's a great performer. Yeah, great performer as well. I never have played it, but its lower plate seems to be weak, and the space next to the hole, the little flaps here and on the other side as well, they seem to be really poor. So I mean, it has at least has a good turret, but its sides are very weak as it's a French heavy tank, and it doesn't seem very good, but it still performs well. Um, from what I've gone against it, it's performed okay. Foch, easily the worst tank. Easily. It has no hull armor. It has no accuracy. It has no gun depression. It has no alpha damage. Everything about this tank is mediocre, at best. The hull armor is awful. It can get penned by anything tier 10 and I was tier 10 and above. Anything tier 9 and above with premium rounds. And its side armor is awful. Its track wheel is awful. It has the viewfinder on top, which can get penned. Its gun is atrocious. It has like .27 dispersion, but it's a lie. It's a complete lie. You miss most of your shots in the Foch, and it's an awful tank. I hate the Foch, and I never want to play it again. And I never do. So moving on, Progetto. I'm gonna say Progetto is super competitive. It's in a really good spot right now, and I think its auto ricochet upper plate, along with its pretty good turret armor and its incredible gun, make it a really strong tank to play just in pubs. And you can really get a Progetto to work. And I'm glad that I bought it back, and I've been playing it quite a bit. So now into the TVP. I'm gonna say it's a great performer. Um, I know people are probably gonna disagree with this, and they're probably gonna put it higher. But I honestly I don't like the TVP. I mean, I like it, like, for the gun, but it seems like you're only gonna get, like, one shot out, or one clip out, before getting completely, uh, rolled over, because everyone's like, oh my god, TVP, he delivered all of his shots in 4.5 seconds, now he has 22 seconds of reload, let's go push him. Um, and then you get pushed and then you die, because you have no armor, and you have no, hardly any hit points. Um, So yeah, TVP is a glass cannon medium tank with a good gun, with a great gun actually. It has 1200 in 4.5 seconds. So, TVP, it's a great performer. Is this, this is the Kara. Um, I think it's decent. I think it's average. I wouldn't say it's above average because it plays like the Minnow but a medium tank, which is not going to work out given that other medium tanks like the 50B, or not the 50B, the E50M, and the Progetto, and the 62A, and the T22, and what other tanks? Um, the Vickers and the Batchat are just going to overpower it because it's just, its turret armor is pretty poor. Its hull armor, it's okay at best, and its gun is just a liability. The Kron, I know that I've mentioned this earlier in the video, but I'm gonna say it's super competitive. Just needs a little bit of a buff. I'd say remove the super speed boost from it and just make its top speed 35 kilometers per hour, and it is perfectly balanced. Um, right now it's a little bit underpowered, but I think it still performs well given its turret armor. And if you can play it auto reloaded well, then you're gonna play the Kronwagen really well. Um, if you haven't played the Kronwagen yet, I'd recommend getting the Minnow first, the Minotauro, to really learn about shell discipline in an auto reloader, and then go play the Kron, and you're gonna ace the tank. So Kron, a really strong tank. It just needs a little bit of a buff, I'd say, and it'll make it a perfect tank. As well, bring in Swedish crew voices. 60 TP, I'm gonna say it's overpowered. Um, overpowered, borderline super competitive because it just has everything going for it. It has a really good gun, uh, an incredible turret. I mean, its turret is basically impenetrable. Um, frontally, it is impenetrable. I mean, unless you get the hatch, which there are two hatches, which one of them isn't even a hitbox. So, and the lower plate, I mean, sometimes you hit the lower plate and it ricochets off the lower plate. So it's just BS. The 60 TP, the armor profile in the hull, and you can learn about the 60 TP. The sides are pennable if you can get to the side and if they overangle a little bit. So but the 60 TP really solid tank. Still one of the best tanks um in tier 10, and still one of the better comp tanks. Strichvon K, I'm going to say it's a great performer. I've never played the tank, but it seems like it's just a Centurion 7-1 with just a good gun. And it's basically a medium tank, so it's hardly even a heavy tank. Um, it does seem to be underperforming though, and I'd say it's just a great performer. Minnow, super competitive, above the E100. It's just a great tank. I mean, I touched on the Kronwagen earlier, and I'm actually going to move the Kronwagen up um, above the 62. So I'd say that the Minnow is one of the best tier 10 tank destroyers, if not the best tier 10 tank destroyer, um, because it just has everything. I mean, it has the gun depression of 11 degrees. It has the turret armor of uh, preposterous proportions, and it just has the gun. I mean, it has 490 alpha with incredible penetration, and it just works. I mean, it's an easy take to do 3k damage in if you just take it, safe and sound, and you don't get COD'd by medium tanks. If you have a team, even if you don't have a team, if you just angle frontally, and if you just look at them frontally, most tanks cannot pen your lower plate. They have to load premium. Or they do have to load premium. Every single tank, except for maybe 210 tank destroyers, have to load premium to pen your lower plate. So it's just a really good tank. And honestly, it might need a little bit of a nerf, but I think it's pretty balanced where it is now. The 183, everyone's gonna hate on me for this, but I'm gonna say it's a decent choice. Um, it works at times. It might be situational, but I still say it's a decent choice. It's the biggest gun in the game, and with that comes the worst accuracy in the game, apart from the Grilla. So, and it has a little bit of armor that can bounce. Super Conqueror, I'm gonna say it's alright situational. Um, its lower plate is really weak, uh, and no one really plays it, and so I will say on the Super Conqueror, actually, I'm going to move it up to decent choices. I will say on the Super Conqueror that its its track wheel is really troll. Um, as like with most of the British American tanks, if you hit the track wheel, you got a pen. With the Super Conqueror, it's like a mouse. You're not gonna pen it if you're looking at it like slightly frontally. Um, and so it's a really troll tank, but the lower plate is so weak and it's so big. And no one really plays it. I wonder why. Onto the last tank here, we have the Chieftain. And, oh, what did I do? Okay, Chieftain. I'm gonna say the Chieftain is a great performer. Um, the turret is really troll. Although it can get penned by high penetration premium rounds, by the other heavy tanks. However, it just has really good DPM, really good penetration as APCR rounds and its AP rounds, and it also has over 100 millimeters of HE rounds. Um, and it just has great mobility and a great turret and a great gun and pretty good hull armor, and it just works really well. So that is my ranking of every single tier 10 tank, from overpowered to avoid, and I hope this helps in choosing your next tier 10 tank. Goodbye.